Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofrumento. If there's one thing I know about every single one of you listeners, it is that you want growth. And of course, growth comes through marketing. Whether you want to ignore it or you want to embrace it, we cannot ignore the fact that marketing is the growth fuel in our businesses. And that's why we've gone out and we've found someone. I'll tell you what, you can find a lot of people talk about marketing, but what you really want to learn from is someone who is in an incredibly competitive landscape and has found ways to succeed there. And I'm increasingly convinced that the home services industry is one of the toughest places to compete when it comes to marketing. And that's why we've found someone who is absolutely incredible at that. The way that they help their clients is unbelievable, and I know we're going to learn a lot from all of his strategies and tactics, and of course, probably a mix of mindset along the way as well. So let me introduce you to today's guest. His name is Adam Aldred. Adam is the founder of Orsin, which is a growth marketing firm specializing in helping home service companies scale revenue through a combination of SEO, Google Ads, website design, and strategic consulting. With over a decade of experience driving growth for brands across tech, AI, and home services, Adam blends data-driven strategy with creative execution to deliver measurable results. He's worked with companies ranging from founder-led restoration businesses to $1 billion franchise brands. So no matter where you fall in the growth spectrum and you think to yourself, life is so much harder because I'm small, or life is so much harder because I'm big, don't worry. Adam is going to take us through the fundamentals that actually work when it comes to growth marketing. So I'm excited about this one. I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Adam Aldred. All right, Adam, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Heck yes. Well, I will tell you, I love talking marketing. These are always my most looked forward to episodes, and I know how much our audience eats it up. So before you and I geek out about marketing, take us beyond the bio. Tell us who's Adam. How did you start doing all these cool things?
Yeah. So I started off in kind of the traditional agency route about 10 years ago in an agency in Houston. And over the last decade, bounced around to a couple different agencies and really found that I loved the digital and growth marketing side of things, but I felt that there were a lot of areas that could be improved when it came to internal things like employee utilization and strategy, but also how you show up and execute for clients. About 18 months ago, I started doing some side work with a family friend, and over the course of that 18 months, ended up getting about 15 additional clients just from referrals alone. Completely replaced my wife's corporate salary and retired her to stay at home with our son, and then eventually quit my corporate job and started doing this full time. So really resonate with what you're doing on the podcast, and it was something that I've always dreamed about for the last 10 years, starting my own business, finally getting to the point where I'm about 6 months in now doing it full time, and it's been a really fun experience.
Yes. I love that overview. I love your entrepreneurial story, Adam. I'm so grateful that you really embrace. One of our founding philosophies behind the show is a rising tide lifts all boats. And it's from learning from other entrepreneurs like yourself that we get to pull others along in their entrepreneurial journeys instead of just daydreaming about it. But I tend to pick on words. And Adam, I'm going to pick on some words right out of the gates because you don't just talk about marketing. You specifically talk about growth marketing. What's the difference there?
Yeah, I think the big one around, the difference between growth or digital marketing or traditional marketing, growth is just like the name says, it's more focused on establishing your business and brand and kind of scaling things up. So a lot of the partnerships and clients that I work with right now are individuals that maybe historically would have done the corporate 9-to-5 life, more of the white collar jobs, that are saying, hey, I might not know a ton about blue collar or home services, but I'm pretty well versed in business. I don't know where to start. I need someone that can help me. I know that marketing is an important piece of that. That's typically where I come into play. And while they're kind of in the background of figuring out the operation side of things, I'm really helping them unlock how do you get visibility online specifically and grow a brand in your community that's going to not only increase revenue and build a business, but allow you to have something sustainable long term.
Yeah, I want to go there because I know that so many people, when we have episodes about marketing, they hone in on the channels. And so obviously I teased just a few of your channels up front. I talked about search engine optimization, Google Ads. You have many of these such tools and channels in your arsenal. But what's not lost on me, Adam, is the fact that you also offer website design. You also offer on that fundamental. So I actually want to start a little bit backwards in our marketing talk today and start there. Before anyone even thinks about SEO, before anyone even thinks about Google Ads or Facebook ads or all the different channels that they can take advantage of course, we need to have a business that is set up to capture leads, that is set up to convert clients. Talk to us about that foundation before we jump into the more traditional marketing conversation.
Yeah. I think obviously if you're someone that's starting a business, in my case in home services, you're going to need a website. It's inevitable at this point. It's kind of your digital storefront, so to speak. I think there's a lot of great tools out there that get the ball rolling in a sense that allow you to purchase a domain and get a website, but actually having a website that's going to be technically fundamentally set up to where you can rank, get traffic, and also convert that traffic in the future is usually a gap or a bridge that I'll fill. And along with that, that's when you start getting into things like SEO and advertising. You don't want to be investing a ton of marketing budget into a website that's not going to convert. Typically, when I'm working with partners that are kind of at the beginning phases of launching their business, the website's the first thing you got to cover. That's going to protect your future marketing investment and then allow your brand to grow. So that's a super important piece to hit on at the beginning.
All right, then let's follow that. I've got a website. Well, actually, hold on. I'm not going to let us move on just yet, Adam, because I want to ask you, what are the key things on the website? Because I was about to say out loud, I've got a website, I'm ready to capture leads, but I guess I'm taking that for granted. A lot of websites actually aren't set up to capture leads. So what do you look for in a website that sets us up for success?
Yeah, in home services specifically, I think you fall into two buckets. There's going to be companies that are more emergency related. That's like damage restoration companies, which I work a lot with. At the end of the day, majority of your leads are going to come in the form of a phone call. So you need to have your, obviously, phone number on the website, but then ways to track when and where that phone call is coming in, recording those conversations so that you can upskill and train whoever's taking the leads. But also on the form submit side, this is more your kitchen, your bathroom remodels, maybe people getting quotes on a new roof. That's where you're going to want to make sure you're doing very similar tracking and intake processes as the phone calls, but in the form of a form submit. So I would say 99% of the time, that's where home service companies are getting leads, and that's how you're getting leads from a website. I know more advanced stuff would be like chat functionality and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, people need to be able to get on the phone with you or at least fill out a form submit that lets you know, hey, when you get a chance, can you please call me? So those are kind of your non-negotiables whenever you're setting up a website.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. It's such a clear list, Adam. That's what I love about your approach to marketing is it's super practical, super actionable. So I'm trusting you very much with our audience, knowing that they're going to get excited about us talking about channels. Let's talk about that because I think it's really cool how many different channels you have in your arsenal. And I would imagine that in the home service industry, you have to because there's a zillion different ways that us as consumers, we find our electricians, we find our HVAC companies, we find all the different vendors that we need because we've got a problem around the house. So talk to us about the depth and breadth of your channel. Should we be talking about quantity? Should we be talking about quality? Let's jump in there.
Yeah, let's do it. So I can start on the advertising side first. Typically, this is the scariest for business owners because it does require larger investments up front, but it will be the quickest way to inject revenue into your business. So if you're someone that's trying to get going, relying solely on something like search engine optimization or SEO is probably not the quickest way to get leads and generate revenue. You're going to want to have some form of advertising. I would say the part that scares people the most is how do I manage Google Ads? How do I set up campaigns in a way that aren't going to burn my budget? One thing that I even noticed in my agency days working at larger companies is that the way you'll set up a Google Ads account for a lead generation business for home services is very different than you would set up for a e-commerce brand or someone trying to sell a candy bar on the internet. The de facto recommendations that Google's going to put out or things that you'll see online on TikTok or YouTube typically aren't tailored to success when it comes to home services. So that's the advertising side of thing. I think SEO is more the longer play. For people that don't know what that is, that's basically just your website showing up on Google without having to pay an advertising cost associated with that. Where that comes in, and to your point, as far as quantity or quality, a lot of the big needle movers for home services are going to be the quality of the content that's on your website that's going to help you rank, how technically sound your website is, so the quality of the website, and then most importantly, off-page ranking factors like reviews. Reviews are huge, as you know. If you've got a plumbing emergency or you need someone to help you put up a new fence around your backyard, you typically are going to go to Google, and then you're going to filter who you're going to reach out to based on how many reviews they have and the quality of those reviews. So a lot of what I'm doing is not only helping in the background, doing some of the more in the weeds marketing tactics, but helping home service businesses acquire reviews and build their reputation and brand in their local city or town. That's super important too.
Yeah, I really want to piggyback off of that, Adam, because you heard me tease at the very top of today's episode about I believe that the home service industry space, it's one of the toughest to compete in, because for us as consumers, we don't know the difference between one HVAC company and another one. And so really there's an added emphasis on differentiation in the marketplace. But how the heck do you differentiate when, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm looking for an electrician. Like I need an electric car charger installed. Talk to us about those differentiating factors, because you already called out reviews. And that's one thing that I, as a consumer, 100% I lean on. I find as well, speed in response is super important to me. When I was having a smart thermostat installed at my place, I remember I called one company, they didn't pick up, so I called another, and that dude instantly answered on the first ring. The first company was already texting me, but they already missed out on my sale. So there's a lot of ways to compete in the home services industry. What are those differentiators that you hone in on?
Yeah, I think the first one, to your point, is just speed of response. I think a lot of the partners that I work with and companies that see success in home services are simply answering the phone when it rings or responding to form submissions within the hour. It sounds like a pretty low bar to clear, but I think anyone that has experience in the trades or home services know it's sometimes easier said than done. But first and foremost, you need to be available when people are trying to get in contact with you. And then I'll even take a step back from that. Let's say you are seeing the reviews on the Google listing. You see that they've got good reviews and you want to click onto the website. The next thing we want to validate as quickly as possible for your brand or from a marketing perspective is building trust signals. So a lot of the things that people are going to be looking for is like, how quickly do you respond? Is your work covered by insurance, depending on the home service thing that you're offering or your business is centered around? Do you have branded imagery or photos on your website? I don't do a ton of that for my business with Orsin, but I partner with other photography and videography people that help with that, because I think a lot of times when people get to a website, they want to see the face of the person that's going to be coming to their door when they come over, or what the branded vehicle is going to look like. I think a lot of brands mess up and try to cut corners with stock photography. There's a lot of issues that can arise with that on not only degrading your brand over time, but I think in the long run, it's going to hurt with SEO rankings, because Google's sophisticated enough to know that, hey, this person's using a stock image like everybody else. I think from a very high level, that's kind of the checklist that I try to look through is pretend you're someone reaching out for, like you said, electric car battery service. You want to see the reviews. You want to see that real people have worked with them. And then when you get to the website, you need to establish very quickly, is this someone that's local to my area? Are they real people? Can I trust them to come into my home? All that good stuff. You want to make sure that you're addressing that as quickly as possible.
I love that you called out stock images. I think that that's something that subconsciously happens to us as consumers that we don't realize it, but you can tell a stock image versus a real image that that company has taken. That matters so much to us as consumers. So I really appreciate that insight. And I want to combine it with two other things, one of which is a concept that you already brought up and put into this conversation. And I want to go deeper there, is that the bar is actually surprisingly low. And I think that's so fascinating in 2025. The other thing I want to lump into this part of the conversation is AI slop. I love that term because we're starting to see AI slop, and I'm going to start saying stock image slop. Like, all of these things are just, everyone is executing way faster with all things digital these days. But I'm thinking it's actually even easier to stand out in the marketplace as the driving force, as the growth marketer behind a lot of these businesses and brands. What's your take on that? Are they willing to put in that ounce of extra work that's going to make that mile of difference?
Yeah. So two things. I want to address some stats that I've seen just in the 25 brands or so that I work with. I want to go back to the barrier to entry or hurdle to clear as far as the answering the phone's concerned. I probably review and listen to 250 to 300 phone calls a month across 25 different home service companies. The average non-answer rate on phone calls is about 20 to 25%. Close rate on answered phone calls is anywhere from 30 to 40%. The close rate on an unanswered phone call, like you have to call them back, is closer to 10. So you have a huge delta in conversion rate or lead to close rate on inbound leads that your business is getting. This can ultimately hurt your business in the long run, but it also kills what you're doing with marketing. Because if you're advertising, you're paying for leads that the close rate is going to be lower when you don't answer. That's a huge killer for home service businesses out there. And then when it comes to getting people to invest in actual photography or videography, I will say that's a battle that I continue to fight to this day. What I have noticed, though, of websites that I've built where we're actually adding personalized, individual, branded photography to websites, the conversion rate is usually 3 to 4 times higher across all traffic sources. So that's direct, referral, advertising, SEO. The conversion rate goes way up when you're building those implied trust signals of, this is what my team looks like, this is what our vehicles look like, we're local to the community, we want to help, versus if you're just using, to your point, AI slop videos, that they just don't work. So when you can back into, all right, your conversion rate will go up by 3 to 4 times, multiply that by your average contract value, you can pretty quickly quantify the revenue lift on investing initially into photos and photography, which I think makes it an easier conversation when I'm dealing with clients in that situation.
Yeah, I love that. Oof, Adam, it's really cool hearing your insights here because it is so competitive. And I think that those statistics really show that not only is it competitive, but it's competitive in a second. You can make or break the deal literally in a second of answering the phone or not answering the phone. I also know, obviously, as a growth marketer, you do believe in technology and you leverage technology to help yourself and help your clients win. On that note, we've seen so much of the rise of AI answering services and AI missed call text backs. Where does that factor into the marketing mix these days, especially for local businesses? Because as a consumer, I'll confess to you that I'm a little mixed. Sometimes when I call a company and they don't answer, part of me thinks, I just have such a simple question. If you had an AI answering this, it could answer that question and take care of me very easily. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so I might be, I don't know, I'm 31 years old, so I'm kind of like firmly in the millennial camp. I would love to not be on the phone if I don't have to be. So the first thing that I like to see for home service businesses that aren't emergency related is the ability to book an appointment online. If I see that you've got good reviews, I'll trust that whatever you do when you come to my house is going to be worthy of it. And I see that reflected in the amount of online bookings that my existing clients get. When it comes to the AI answering services, I think it's a very hot and trendy topic for a lot of people to be like, have AI handle all of your inbound calls. I have tried this with a couple clients that were really bullish on it, and it worked terribly. The only way that I've seen it work up to this point is if you have an AI answering service that's very explicit when answering the phone saying, I'm an AI answering service. Our team is not available right now, but if you could ask your questions or give me the pertinent personal information that pertains to you, I can relay that to our team so they'll be able to get back to you quicker. When you frame it like that, I think, to your point, the simple kind of layup questions get answered by the AI answering service, and something that's more robust, that's going to require a phone call, a scheduled appointment, an assessment, all that good stuff. When you clearly tell them, hey, I'm just fielding this because our human team isn't available right now. They're going to call you back, but they'll have your information and have a good idea of whatever project you're trying to do. That seems to work a lot better than the AI saying, I'm going to handle this entire lead intake. You won't speak with a human on our team until we get to your house. historically, at least anecdotally from what I've seen, that does not work.
Yeah. Ooh, I love those insights, especially knowing that you are experimenting, you're learning, you're running tests across real life businesses and real life markets. It's really cool to hear that. And I also want to go back to, because there's so many things in life and in business that sometimes we can control, sometimes we can't control. I want to call out two things that I hear very frequently from our listeners around the world that they feel like they can't control. Because Adam, I've been excited to have you here on the air with us, because it's very clear to me that you believe these are controllable things that you can put strategy and tactics behind, and that is reviews and also referrals. Most people think these things happen just magically or unintentionally. You not only leverage that for your clients, but that's been key driving forces for your own business. Talk to us about reviews and referrals, because those are such interesting and simple growth hacks if we actually apply them intentionally.
Yeah, so I'll use my experience first, and then I can give the home services example too. So for me, like I said at the top, I was working a corporate job when I initially started Orsin on the side. I quickly found out that I wanted to make a lot more money once I found out my wife was pregnant. I think we realized that officially when we were touring daycares for our son. We kind of came to the realization of it would be amazing if my wife could stay home with our son. And I wasn't sure how I was going to figure it out, but within the time, she became pregnant and had our son, I had figured it out, and it all came down to referrals. So basically, if you're starting a business, your main goal whenever you're servicing a client or delivering a product should be over delivering on whatever you've promised to do, knowing that when you work that way, people will want to brag about you to their friends, particularly if you're working directly with other business owners. Business owners tend to have other business owner friends. They'll tell them how awesome you are, and then you're kind of off to the races there. The ramp up period's a little bit slow, which I wasn't super worried about because I had a corporate salary. But once you get to about 5-10 clients, you start getting 3 or 4 referrals a week. You can really start stacking up from there. To this point, I've grown my business to about $40K a month in recurring revenue, all from referrals. And then I've been posting organically on TikTok. So I'm a testament to the fact that referrals and reviews are super important. On the home services side, I think where I really like it from a marketing perspective is, let's say that you're running an advertisement for a roofing company and you have really good reviews. The person sees that in your local service ad or whatever it may be. They reach out and they convert. Well, when you get on site to the person's house, you've got your branded vehicle, your branded clothing, maybe you've got some additional signage. You finish the roof. I always recommend people, once they're done with the job, to go around to the neighbors and not solicit them necessarily, but just let them know, like, hey, I did your neighbor's roof. If you want to essentially keep up with the Joneses, we can help you with your roof too. Happy to come back out and do a free assessment, blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, you're going to pick up like 2 or 3 roofs on the same street. Your customer acquisition cost will essentially be zero, or whatever it was to achieve that client when you ran the ads, but you're extending the lifetime value of that customer because you've gotten 3 additional customers. That's how you can really scale marketing and grow your business, because you're not out hunting and paying for every single lead or job that you do. You're having other people kind of amplify your brand and your services for you. It compounds really quickly. It's something really cool.
Ooh, I love that. Listeners, do you see why we've been so excited to have Adam here on the air? This is where strategy meets tactics meets experimentation. So I really appreciate these insights from you, Adam, but you used a big word that I feel like we throw around so frequently in business and entrepreneurship, and that is scale. And when I hear people talk about scale, I frequently think about capacity and understanding capacity and obviously unlocking capacity. I'm going to ask you this. I love how you answered that last question from both sides, yourself as well as your clients. I'm going to ask you this one that way as well, and that is understanding your capacity, knowing that you have a lean team, knowing that the clients that you work with, they have staffing, of course, they have different size teams that they're working with. How much do you pay attention to capacity? Is capacity planning something that you do? Is it something that your clients sometimes say, hey, Adam, we can't take on new projects this month, like we need to slow things down? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, so that inevitably does happen, which is a good problem for me. A tricky problem to figure out for the home service company, but one that I would argue anyone's willing to figure out. If you say, hey, we have so much work, we can't service it all, that's a great problem to have. Typically what I do whenever I start an engagement or even begin conversations with someone is try to understand, what's your current team size? How much equipment do you have? What would the absolute busiest day or busiest week look like? That way we can back into, if money was no object and we could pour unlimited budget into marketing, how much could you actually service? When would you hit your breaking point? And then what would be the next couple things you would need to invest in order to fulfill that? Super important conversation to have, and a little bit outside of the realm of just growth marketing that I'm doing, but important for the business owner to understand, because where I've seen a lot of people make mistakes, particularly in home services, is they'll ramp up on startup costs too much at the beginning. They'll get like 2 vehicles and 3 times as much equipment as they need, or they might hire 2 lead techs when they only need 1. That really constrains your cash flow and makes everything else extremely difficult to accomplish. You will never scale your business when you have constrained cash flow like that, especially in a home service business if you're dealing with insurance jobs and you're not sure when the payout will occur or things like that. Super important to understand how much could we take on now, when's our breaking point, and then what kind of prioritize things would we need to accomplish in order to expand to the next breaking point and actually scale our business. If you don't know that before you start, you're kind of flying blind, in my opinion. So always make sure I have that conversation at the start.
Ooh, I love that. I've got to squeeze 2 more questions in because time always flies by in these conversations, but it's always fun hearing how other founders are using AI behind the scenes in their own businesses. Because I feel like you and I, while we both are eternal optimist millennials when it comes to technology making the world a better place, at the same time, we also threw a little bit of shade at them about the fact that it doesn't fully replace our interactions with our clients, and it's not always the best way, but it can unlock so much. Speaking of capacity, it can unlock so much capacity, brainstorming, so many different things behind the scenes in our businesses. What are some of the ways that you're using AI behind the scenes personally and professionally?
Yeah, I think the big ones for me come down to more administrative tasks. So invoicing, onboarding automations, monthly reporting, email updates, those type of things. I lean on AI pretty heavily, not to complete kind of copy paste finalized versions of things, but get it 75 to 80% of the way there. And then I can take it across the finish line. I've seen that before implementing AI, I was spending anywhere from 5 to 10 hours a week on those type of things, where now I'm spending maybe 2 to 3 hours. So that compounds pretty quickly over time, especially when I started and was juggling a corporate job and a newborn baby, and then to now where I'm trying to scale and grow the team and the business. I think that's super important. Where I'm a little bit hesitant up to this point is leveraging AI too much when it comes to executing and lever pulling specific marketing channels. I've been on extremely large partnerships with giant companies where they've said, we're going to rely on AI for our SEO content or to implement recommendations within the ad campaigns. It will reduce the headcount that we need internally on projects, yada, yada, yada. Fast forward 3 months, results have tanked, partnerships are strained, everyone's upset. I candidly have yet to see this point where you could implement something in the form of AI that can completely execute an SEO strategy or an advertising strategy. I think there's thoughtful and intentional ways that you can kind of apply the same ideas that I had on the admin side of these things are repetitive. We can reduce the amount of time spending on them, but the actual strategy and execution, I fundamentally believe, is still very human driven. And then your ability to interpret and understand the results that you're getting and then reorienting the strategic direction based on those results, up into this point, from everything that I've seen, still very human centric. So, like everyone else, really focusing on AI in any ways that I can implement it, but being very intentional and careful with what spots I'm picking and what type of potential fallout there might be in the form of client results, because that would be kind of the worst case scenario.
So well said. I really appreciate that perspective in a world where we all want to talk about AI. We're all thinking about AI, but that strategy and that intention that you're putting behind it, super meaningful for all of us to take inside of our own businesses. So Adam, I knew that time would fly by. I'm only going to put you on the spot one last time, and it's a super broad question that I always ask at the end of these conversations. And that is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? I feel like you and I jumped into so many different marketing and growth and scale related topics today. So I'm excited to see how you top all that, knowing that our audience is both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys. And also knowing that you are one of us, you're a fellow entrepreneur. What's that one piece of advice that you want to leave them with today?
Yeah, I think you want to establish momentum as quick as you can and then don't let it die out. And specifically what that looked like to me was taking on the family friend that wanted marketing help. That snowballed into the business I have with Orsin, retired my wife, quit my corporate job, moved my family to Colorado, had a newborn son. I did all that in the span of 4 months. I think that if you told me 2 years ago that I would do something like that, I wouldn't have believed you. But I think that once you establish momentum, you want to make sure that you continue to run with it because your life will be changed forever. That's certainly been the case for me.
Boom. I love that advice. Adam, if people don't get fired up from that type of advice, then I don't know what's going to get them going. So huge kudos to you in taking not only action, but fast action, building that momentum. It's so important in our lives, in our businesses, and everything that we do. Speed matters. And I'm really grateful for you emphasizing these points with our audience today. I'm also very excited for listeners to check out the work that you're doing. I will say, just even before getting together with you here today to have this conversation on the air, it's been really fun seeing how much you care about the people that you serve, how much you intentionally think about your messaging, your positioning, the way that you help people. I love you're always armed with really impactful stats, even here during our conversation. So for listeners who want to find you online, drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Yeah, I'm on Adam_Aldred, ALDRED on everything. I mostly just post on TikTok. I've had some pretty good traction there and started working with a few clients and have really enjoyed that. So if you're looking to see more from me, I would probably say go to TikTok, but I post on Instagram as well.
Yes, and listeners, you already know the drill. We're making it as easy as possible for you to find Adam in all the places online in the show notes down below. You can click right on through using the links that we're dropping there. We're linking directly to Orsin's website. It's orsin.io, so don't be shy about checking out Adam's website as well as his socials. It's always cool seeing people take massive action. And Adam, I always remind people, it's like a lottery ticket. Every time you post on LinkedIn or on TikTok, you never know who you're going to reach with that. I think about it all the time with podcasting. So huge kudos to you for continuing to show up for yourself and so many others. Listeners, check those links down below. Otherwise, Adam, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. It was great. Really appreciate it.